of conscious uncoupling from the very people who built our reality.
And that conscious, painful rejection is, I mean, it's really the engine driving the source material we are pulling apart today on this deep dive.
It really is.
We are looking at a text titled Good and Evil, Sean, written by Mohammed Abdullah. And just to clear the air immediately, because I know what people are thinking as the author humorously notes in his own prologue, this has absolutely nothing to do with the Simon Pegg comedy Shaun of the Dead.
Right. Definitely not a zombie comedy.
Yeah, no. This is a gritty, unfiltered psychological profile of a 17-year-old boy named Sean, and he's just trying to navigate life on the Kirkholt Council estate in Rochdale, UK.
And the author places us so firmly in the reality of, single-parent households, systemic neglect, and just the sheer exhausting force of will that it requires to invent your own moral compass when your environment refuses to give you one.
Yeah.
And what elevates this text from, just a mere narrative to a clinical study is really where it was published.
Which is fascinating, right?
Yeah, right. This piece appeared in the Journal of Islamic Psychology in March of 2026. So the publication context asks us to read this not as fiction, but as an acute analysis of environmental pressure, the mechanics of agency, and the really granular everyday process of halting intergenerational trauma right in its tracks.
Which means we have a very clear lens for today's conversation. Yeah. And I want you listening to keep this at the front of your mind as we go through this. Even if your upbringing looks absolutely nothing like Sean's like, even if you've never seen a UK council estate in your life, this text is holding up a mirror to the universal architecture of identity.
Absolutely.
We're pulling apart how the physical spaces we inhabit literally rewire our brains, how our peer groups normalize deviance, and this is the big one, how we can weaponize negative role models to map out our own survival.
And the physical space is really the perfect place to start because Abdullah writes the Kirkholt estate as like an active antagonist.
Yeah, it's a character itself.
It is. It isn't just a backdrop. The environment itself is hostile.
There's a specific line where Sean says, Kirkholt isn't the kind of place people choose. It's the kind of place you end up in.
Wow.
Right? And he describes the sensory reality of it, saying it's, quote, rows of tired brick houses, graffiti that never fully gets cleaned, broken glass that crunches under your trainers no matter which path you take.
From an environmental psychology perspective, that phrasing, the kind of place you end up in, it's such a clear expression of learned helplessness.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the environment communicates this complete deprivation of agency. You don't aspire to Kirkholt,
Mm-hmm.
It is the absolute bottom of the socioeconomic funnel. Gravity just pulls you down until you hit the grate and you stay there.
It operates exactly like an event horizon in space.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Like, once you cross into the gravitational pull of a place defined by such intense deprivation, it requires an immense, almost biologically impossible amount of escape velocity to get out.
Yeah.
If you just float, the estate consumes you. And those physical details, the broken glass, the graffiti, they aren't just, aesthetic choices by the author to set a mood. They are psychological cues.
Yeah, we see this deeply rooted in the broken windows theory of criminology and urban decay.
Right.
When a teenager walks out of their front door every single morning and sees uncollected rubbish or a permanently shattered bus shelter, they are internalizing a message from the broader society.
And that message is what exactly?
The physical world is broadcasting, you are not worth the resources it would take to repair this.
Oof.
Right. And over time, that visual degradation, it lowers the baseline of self-worth for the people living inside it. It breeds fatalism. So that, quote, the broken glass that crunches under your trainers no matter which path you take, that is a masterful metaphor for the illusion of choice and poverty.
Because the path doesn't matter.
Exactly. You can choose the left alley or the right street, but you're still walking on the wreckage of systemic neglect.
Okay, I hear the structural argument there, but I'm actually going to challenge that fatalism for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Because we constantly hear narratives about impoverished neighborhoods developing these like unbreakable communal bonds, right? The idea that, well, the system abandoned us, so all we have is each other.
Yeah, the romanticization of the struggle.
Exactly. Doesn't the shared trauma of a place like Kirkholt forge a protective community spirit that counteracts the broken glass?
It's a fair question, but Abdullah anticipates that exact romanticized view of poverty, and he dismantles it with a single observation from Sean. Sean notes everyone knows everyone, but no one really knows anyone.
Oh, wow. That distinction between proximity and intimacy.
Precisely. You are confusing forced proximity with psychological safety.
Right.
What Sean describes is essentially a hypervigilant surveillance state masquerading as a neighborhood.
Oh, that's dark.
Everyone knows who got arrested, who is drinking away their giro, who owes money. The business of survival is completely public, but genuine community requires vulnerability. And in an environment of artificial scarcity and high stress, vulnerability is dangerous.
Because someone will use it against you.
Exactly. So you have this crushing paradox where people live stacked on top of each other, constantly observed, yet profoundly, deeply isolated in their internal struggles.
Which really drives us right into the most intimate, devastating portrait of that isolation in the text, which is Sean's home life.
Yeah.
His mother works night shifts cleaning offices. And Sean tells us she comes home smelling of chemicals and exhaustion.
The author is stripping away any cinematic gloss from the working class struggle here. The smell of industrial cleaning chemicals clinging to her skin. It's the visceral toxic residue of her labor.
Yeah.
She's absorbing the harshness of the physical world just to keep her son fed.
And there is a scene that genuinely stopped me in my tracks when I was prepping for this deep dive. Sean describes lying awake, listening to his mother in the kitchen after her shift.
This part is so heavy.
He says she is sitting at the table, quote, just breathing, not crying, just breathing like it's heavy.
Yeah.
And I really want to linger on that specific biological distinction. Why point out that she isn't crying? What does that tell us?
Well, because crying requires surplus energy.
Wait, really?
Yes. Crying is an acute, active response of the parasympathetic nervous system trying to process an emotional spike. It implies there is still a reservoir of emotional capacity left to actually express grief.
Oh, my God.
What Sean is hearing in that heavy breathing is something far more dangerous. He is hearing allostatic overload.
Let's break down that mechanism for the listener, because that's fascinating. What is actually happening in our body in that moment?
So allostatic load is the cumulative wear and tear on biological systems caused by chronic stress. When you are trapped in poverty, your amygdala is constantly firing, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline because everything is a threat. How will I pay rent? Is my kid safe on the estate?
It's like the engine is constantly redlining.
Exactly. And over years, the endocrine system just becomes exhausted. The heavy breathing Sean hears isn't sadness. It is the sound of an organism that has absolutely zero metabolic energy left for emotion.
It's just survival.
It is the sheer mechanical effort of taking in oxygen because the brain stem is forcing the lungs to operate. She is surviving at the absolute baseline of biological imperative.
She is enduring a marathon of mere existence.
Yes.
And the psychological fallout of this falls squarely onto Sean's shoulders. He's 17. He's in the next room listening to the literal weight of his own existence compressing his mother's lungs.
It's heartbreaking.
And it forms his core operating principle. He tells us, quote, I try not to be another weight.
Which is the textbook definition of a parentified child. Normal adolescent development requires the child to take up space. Teenagers are biologically wired to test boundaries, to make chaotic mistakes, and to fall back on their parents as a safety net.
Yeah, that's how you learn who you are.
But Sean looks at his mother, assesses that the safety net is frayed to the molecular level, and realizes he cannot afford adolescence.
He just skips it.
Pretty much. If he acts out, if he needs something, the net breaks. He effectively amputates his own needs to ensure his mother's survival.
But, if your entire existence is defined by making yourself as small and frictionless as possible, where did your ambition go?
It vanishes.
Right. If your home is a space of silent endurance, you would hope the outside world, specifically, the institutions designed to protect youth, would step in. You would hope the school system would recognize Sean's intelligence and throw him a lifeline.
You'd hope so. But the tragedy of the bureaucratic state is that its institutions are staffed by human beings who are susceptible to the exact same biases as the environment itself. The systemic failure doesn't stop at the school gates,
Right.
It's just formalized in the classroom.
Sean tells us school was never a fit, but he adds a crucial caveat. He says, not because I'm stupid, I know I'm not.
That's a great level of self-awareness.
Yeah, so his cognitive self-esteem is intact. He recognizes his own capacity. But he checks out because, in his words, teachers look at you like your future's already been decided.
We all know the Pygmalion effect, right?
Remind us real quick.
It's a psychological phenomenon where high expectations lead to improved performance. But what Abdullah is dissecting here is its insidious twin, which is the Golem effect.
The Golem effect.
Yes. This is the weaponization of low expectations.
Let's look at the mechanism of that weaponization. Because a teacher doesn't normally stand at the front of the room and announce, hey guys, I expect you to fail.
No, of course not.